Hey everyone, welcome to this week's CyberTalk with Chris and Bob. This week we're honored to have Mike DePalma from Datto here for World Backup Day. For those of you who don't know, today is World Backup Day, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about some SaaS backups. A lot of people don't even know what SaaS is, so I figure we could probably kick that off and really talk about what SaaS is. Everyone has a cloud platform that they may use, and that's pretty much where, and SaaS covers all of those platforms. But specifically, a lot of times, email could be your backup, your SaaS platform, or what else, Chris?
More common now is ERPs. A lot of ERPs are moving from traditional software into the cloud. Accounting applications, finance applications, storage. Salesforce, yeah, sales, marketing. We're pretty much using SaaS for everything in our business now. I mean, our entire business is built off of SaaS, honestly. We don't have very many things that are just legacy.
Well, that's a great point. Most of our clients don't have servers anymore.
Yeah.
So
we're trying to get rid of them. One of the two.
Right. And, I brought Mike in here to talk about some of the SaaS products, specifically around a lot of things people are using every day. The people have got their Office 365 accounts, or they got their Google Apps account, Google Workspace. So that's pretty much where today's discussion really is, because people don't have the file servers anymore. So where are they putting their files?
Right. Yeah, I think if you ask people to go back to, after listening to this and just say, hey, go do an inventory of all the SaaS applications that you're using, you will be shocked to find out exactly how many. A lot of times one department's using one that another department doesn't even know exists, although everybody has access to it. So, I mean, when it all fits in, most people, you think World Backup Day, you think exactly what you guys are talking about. Some on-premise server, here's my hard drive, that's backup, right? That's what we've been thinking about for the last 30 years. The data sprawl and the fact that real tangible data is living in all of these SaaS applications that businesses rely on. First step is to do that inventory, figure out where that data lives, who has access to it. I know we'll probably get into that a little bit, but it's a simple step. But I don't think a lot of businesses, the ones that I talk to, are really that aware of all the data that lives in all these SaaS applications.
Not only that, just like who owns the account?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you'll go into a business and somebody signed up for a personal Dropbox or some personal, and they'll put business data in there and they'll share it out. Well, what happens when they walk out the door?
Exactly.
You lose control of that data.
Yep.
So understanding the data flow in your business is important, and understanding we're going to get into this, but how do you recover from that? Something happens to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, again, when we looked at what happened over the pandemic, everybody, the work from anywhere environment, we in the IT space were prepared for that. We were predicting that this day was going to come. It just accelerated, right? We saw the writing on the wall. I mean, we've been in business 15 years, primarily backing up on-premise data. We didn't start to pivot because of the pandemic. We started this process of starting to back up that other data 7-8 years ago, right? So we all knew. It just kind of accelerated probably what would have taken 3 to 5 years in a matter of probably 3 to 5 months out of necessity, right?
Yeah, right. So Chris had a really, really good point that you don't know where this data is. That's one of the things that I know when Chris and I are talking to people now, it's really doing a risk assessment and finding out where that data is, because if that personal account goes away that somebody had, where are we? Where is that business data? Which we try and make sure that people are using the business versions of everything. Make sure that we have an Office 365 or a G Suite account that's set up and managed, because even somebody going through and signing up for an Office 365 account by themselves, they turn it on, it's not tuned for security, it's not tuned for backup, and I talked about it last week where somebody had a $200,000 data loss from a client because of a data breach. But so. Now, that's kind of getting past what we're talking about today, but from a backup perspective, a lot of people think they might be on the cloud. I don't have to worry about that anymore. And I know that's a huge problem, and it's a mindset change too. How we educate people that their data really isn't there. But what things can we do today to really cover that from a backup perspective?
Let's cover Microsoft real quick. So most cloud providers have like some sort of retention period for deleted files. Let's be honest about that. The problem is the default's 30 days for Microsoft. So what happens if you catch it in 30 days, it's great. If somebody deletes a file or whatever, but if you don't catch it in 30 days, guess what happens on day 31? You can no longer recover that with a built-in retention in Microsoft. And that's where we start pivoting into backup and why it's so important.
And Chris, that's the same thing, because if you got a rogue employee that's systematically deleting stuff, you can't get it back.
Well, and in that case, like you said, if they're systematically deleting stuff, you're never going to know it. If it's a file here, file there, file wherever, you can even go into talk about encryption at that point. What if they start encrypting the data slowly over time? And if you want to talk about securing 365, if you don't secure it, what happens if they go in there and turn the retention period off, or turn it to 1 day, and start doing that? So obviously having backup after that is going to be critically important.
So Mike, we were talking in the green room about what Microsoft's responsibilities are. Can you share some of that?
Yeah, and Microsoft, as well as basically all of the software as a service applications, have this shared responsibility model. So basically what they'll say, and they're very public about it. I've sat on panels with folks from the Microsoft team, and they will tell the audience, you bear some responsibility as that tenant, because a lot of times it's not brute force into Microsoft's cloud, right? Their cloud is very secure. As a criminal, you're looking for the low-hanging fruit of, somebody clicking on an email they're not supposed to, gaining access that way. So there is a shared responsibility model. We have a product that backs it up, and we need to go into details of that, but Microsoft has endorsed it. We're going around the country. We have our first roadshow coming up in New York alongside Microsoft, because they are telling you go to their SLA, you go to their user forums, they will tell you need to back up this data on an external site, because the mindset needs to be the same. This is critical data. It needs to be backed up. Just because it's not sitting on some Windows server in your office, it's still critical data. And Microsoft's very open about that. They are not in the world of backup. Yes, there is a backup, built into it, but that is not the type of backup that a business really needs. It's great if it's your family photos and that type of things, right? But as a business, it needs to be viewed just like any other data.
Yeah, and some really good things that are happening with a cloud-based backup solution is the fact that it's happening. It's happening every day. It's happening multiple times a day, so that we are getting those changes. So when somebody does accidentally delete something in the middle of the day, we have a good chance of getting that data back.
Yeah, and we've seen a huge uptick on attacks. Criminals are smart and they're opportunistic. So the mindset has always been, who are they attacking? On-premise Windows-based servers. And people think that's because they're less secure. Really, it's because there's so much data that lives there. As data migrates, they're going to follow that. Bob, you probably remember the last big DattoCon we had was out in San Diego, and we hired Kevin Mitnick. If anybody's not familiar with Kevin Mitnick, really interesting story. FBI's most wanted list, gets caught, comes out. It's like, catch me if you can. Now he's a good guy. And he created a live virus. Not to say this is a click-through. This is to say, if I was a criminal right now, this is where my focus would be. It was on Microsoft 365. That was June of 2019. Think about how much that has evolved, right? And that's a forward thinking of criminals. He said, this is the future. This is what we're talking about. But think about now. They were already prepared for something like the pandemic, where everybody worked remote, and the boom in Microsoft 365. Think about where that's gone. And you could just Google it right now as you're listening to this. You will find story after story after story about attacks on Microsoft 365 accounts.
Yeah, that demo was pretty famous in the channel community, because it was clicking on one link, and then everything that was inside that user's account got encrypted. Everyone heard of ransomware because they saw the crypto lockers messages, but this was ransom cloud, where everything in the cloud environment was getting encrypted. And Kevin wasn't necessarily on site, but it was his application was reaching into the cloud environment and backing and encrypting. From what we've seen, that wasn't specific to Microsoft. It could have happened just as easily. He could have built that for the Google environment, and So Chris, was the are we attacking Microsoft on this, or are other platforms have similar policies around backups and retentions?
No, I mean Google has the same idea. Dropbox has the same idea. Pretty much all of them have. They have retention periods for deleted files, but they're not backup at the end of the day.
Yep, and that's why we have to back up everything that we've got in our Google Cloud environment, our Google or our Microsoft environment. And
Well,
unfortunately, a lot of the tools we have don't work on the consumer stuff. So people really need to get their own platforms built out and not try and use the free Gmail account to back up their stuff.
well, and then if we expand outside of that realm of like SaaS applications, we start getting to like Salesforce and things like that, and other applications you may use that are SaaS apps, you may not be able to back those up. So now you have to talk about the shared responsibility and accountability of holding that vendor responsible for knowing what their backup and disaster recovery policy is. A perfect example of that was Kronos. Look what happened to Kronos Cloud starting in December when they had ransomware. And cities and hospitals and universities and companies couldn't do HR functions because Kronos clearly was not doing their security or their backup and disaster recovery properly.
Yep. So the message that we really need to get to everybody today is, if you're using a SaaS platform, make sure you back it up.
Yeah.
And we can move on and talk about we can talk about some desktop backup products, backup solutions that also need to happen depending on how that environment's set up. Because right now everyone's working remote. They're keeping more and more data locally. Hopefully they're using computers that are business owned and managed, but they still need to be backed up. So we just plug in the USB drive and back it every day, right?
Just rely on them to manually go do that, right? But yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, it used to be very simple. I think that you're sitting in the office, everything backed up to a server. There's very little, responsibility on that person's side. Now that everybody's remote, and even as we're going back, the reality is this kind of transient workforce is what it's going to rely on. Most businesses, especially up here in the Northeast, it's 3 days in, 2 days off. My wife goes in 2 days a week. Sometimes you're not even at the same desk. So yeah, there's shared tools that you're supposed to be backing up your data, but this is the real world, right? So people don't always follow those. And you have to try to take the user error out of it as much as possible. If you get an email, I remember my previous job, it was our responsibility weekly to go back up our data. How many people on a Friday afternoon remember to do that or do it properly, right? It's just human nature. So all of that stuff needs to be, again, back to the simple stuff, inventoried. Who has access to it? Where does that data live? And where is it backed up? It shouldn't be if it's being backed up. Just tell me where it's being backed up and start with that conversation and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, we've actually been we've been rolling out desktop backup solutions. Actually, the continuity cloud from Datto to actually back up those end user desktops that are sitting out there that people aren't supposed to store documents on their desktop. They do. There's a lot of them. So now we get to back it up and get things going quickly. So
we've
good
for desktop backup, we've made it. Depends on the business. Like if it's a critical desktop, 100% back it up. You need to, especially, I can't tell you how many times people have had their UPS World Ship desktop die. Like something like that's critical business function they don't even think about. We try to leverage some of the tools from Microsoft to back up like the desktops, documents, and pictures, and then we'll leverage something like Datto to then back that up from the cloud. That's been our strategy, at least from the desktop perspective. That way we keep from installing too many agents on a desktop and kind of rely on that strategy. That's the way we've taken it anyway.
Well, that's the other that brings up a really good point too, because a backup solution is more than just one copy.
Yeah.
And with what you just created with using Microsoft tools and Datto, you've now got multiple copies.
Yeah, it's 3-2-1 strategy, right?
Yeah.
So we have 3 copies of the data, 2 on 2 different mediums, and one of them has to be offsite. In our case, 2 of them are offsite if we're using OneDrive, and then Datto on the flip side, but same principle.
Cool. Yeah. Well, that's 15 minutes of the call, and I'd like to thank Mike for dropping in with Chris and I today to
thanks.
really remind people about backup. And Chris, do you have any parting words for people on backup?
USB hard drives are for backup. They're not for you to store your actual live data. Please remember that. I can't tell you how many people I've seen use USB drives as primary data storage and have them die.
And also encrypt those data stores, because you never know where they're going to end up. And we've got that tip and more tips sitting over on this website. If you jump over to 15ways.metromsp.com, you can download a tip sheet that's going to have backup options and also other additional cybersecurity solutions that you can implement today to protect your business. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, man.